operating systems of the creative thinker? Well, to address all these and many more questions, we have some eminent leaders with us who are going to share their views and give us an insight on how innovation and character are linked together. So I would like to request, starting with Mr. Shailesh Singh, Director and Chief People Officer at Max Life Insurance Corporation Limited, graduate from Delhi University and postgraduate from IRMA University, Gujarat. He carries a rich experience across diversity industry sectors. So please come on stage. Mr. M.S. Shankar, Senior Director Technology and Innovation, graduated from College of Engineering, Pune, and a graduate visionary leader from manufacturing. Ms. R. Khanot, Associate Director Human Resources at IBM Global Technology Services, who with her Masters from International Institute of Management, a self-motivated professional with 24 years of work experience. And Ms. Medley Sirgaonkar, Deputy General Manager, Innovation, Mahindra Group Strategy Department. She completed her MBA from said Business School, University of Oxford, UK, Law degree from University of Mumbai, and Economics Honours graduate from St. Xavier's, Mumbai. And we have our moderator from School of Inspired Leadership, our program chair for Human Resource Leadership Program, a leader who holds a PhD from Carnegie Mellon University, USA, and has 12 years of varied experience in industry, teaching, and consulting in the US and in India. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Dr. Snehal Shah.
Good morning to all of you, and a very warm welcome to this time and space. Today we are talking and we would like to discuss and debate about a very important topic that is very dear to the School of Inspired Leadership, and it totally aligns with the philosophy that we try to not only practice here, but live it day to day, every day, with ourselves and with our students. And it's about character and innovation, about new ideas, new thinking, and how can it be ingrained and embedded in the values of individuals and of organizations. Before we start the panel, I would like to say a few words about how it's going to go. I'm going to set the context for a few minutes, and then I'm going to invite each of my esteemed panelists to come and set the context for about 5 minutes each. And then we have some wonderful questions that we have, and we thought we'd make it quite interactive. So we are going to, amongst the panel, we are going to throw out some questions which are very relevant in 3 different aspects, 3 or 4 different aspects. One is, how do we infuse innovation at the individual level? It's about the self, it's about us. Second, how do you create the culture, as Rachna puts it, who is my esteemed panelist, the ecosystem, the organizational culture for innovation? That is the second aspect that we would like to talk about. The third one is the technology interface. Any conversation in any conferences would not be worthwhile without understanding the impact of technology and social media at this time in the context of innovation. And the fourth aspect, which we would like to understand, is how, because we are here not only to talk about us as individuals, as others as organizations, but at the national level, we are very keen to understand how do you create a mindset in India for innovation? How do we think differently? How do we spew all this great ideas and knowledge and put it into action? And you know what? That is the difference between creativity and innovation. Creativity is just great ideas that we think of, but innovation is actually putting it to practice, get it into fruition, and understanding and applying. And where does the character come in? Character comes in when innovation is applied, implemented in the context of larger purpose, a higher goal, larger than yourself. How does it impact the society? In that context, I will end my 5 minutes of setting the context with a story, and some of us at SOIL keep talking about it, of Alfred Nobel. Nobel, the Nobel Prize that we are all aware of. It seems as a Swedish scientist in the 1940s, the newspaper made a mistake one day, and in fact, his brother had died, and in the obituary, they mistakenly talked about that Alfred Nobel had died, and not the brother. So in the morning, when he understood that what the mistake had happened, he said, let me not just correct this mistake. Let me see what people have to say. If I had died, Manu, my alumnus, is smiling right now. Maybe he's familiar with the story. That if I have died, what is the kind of reaction posthumous? Because then people will start talking about you when you're not there. The real truth comes out, right? And people talked about him as, you know what? They spoke about him as merchant of death. Why? Because he had innovated this technology called dynamite. And you know what? He had created dynamite for peace purposes. He said this is such a potent product, we will be using it for peace. But that innovation, was it used for peace? Everybody thought that he had developed this dynamite for war, for annihilation. And that suddenly realized that that's not what he wanted to leave the legacy for. And that's how, in his will, he dedicated millions of dollars for a Nobel Prize, and instilling this prize, which is called the Nobel Prize, which we are all familiar, for outstanding contribution in different fields. So again, the combination of innovation and put it into practice for a noble purpose is the discussion of today. With that, setting the context, I would start with my right, and I would request Michael, and you can just go from my right to my left and set the context, and then we will discuss and debate certain questions. And we would also have more interactive session post the discussion. We have some exciting 45 minutes for audience interaction and open space in that format. So with that, I welcome Michael. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sneha. It's a great privilege to be here at SOIL today at the Inspire Leadership Conference. This is my first time, but I'm very happy to be representing the Mahindra Group at the conference, sharing time with you all. Before I begin, a quick quiz. Have any of you heard of the term VUCA, which is spelled V-U-C-A? Tell me what it stands for, please.
It stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity.
Wonderful. So the notion VUCA was actually something that began in the 1990s. It has a little bit of a military legacy. The United States Army War College is where volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity started becoming the way that a lot of defense strategies were formulated. The acronym was actually coined much later, around the time of the September 11 attacks. And increasingly, I'm sure, as probably one of you heard, the word about this, it's been used in the business context a lot more. Because really the world we work in today is characterized by all of these things, isn't it? Volatility. It's important to be able to accept that change is inevitable, but also not just inevitability of change. How do you deal with change? How do you know that each time something that you expect is not going to be the same? And therefore, how do you devise the way that your organization works to be able to deal with that flexibility in its environment? Uncertainty. It's an unnerving fact to know that the decisions you take as leaders may not have a very certain outcome. How do you prepare for that? How do you make sure that you will have a little bit of fallback space even if things don't go exactly as you planned? Complexity. It's not only important to accept that things are complex, but embrace them. Embrace the complexity, because we are now becoming more cosmopolitan, we're becoming more diverse, differently abled, and not just in terms of people who used to be called handicapped, but differently able because all of us have different skills. Each of us is an individual with an individual set of skills which are required in this corporate world today. And complex also because everything is related to everything else. There was a time when organizations used to be functionally oriented. Then there was the great matrix organization. And even that's not enough anymore. It's a network organization. Every person could be a hub or a spoke of a network. So, where your supplier could be your customer, where your customer could also be your PR agent, how do you deal with this complexity that's around you? Ambiguity. Sometimes I really wonder if that's a great euphemism for chaos. How do you deal with the fact that there may not be any structure, that there may not be closed loops, that there may not be a very apparent chain of command, lack of hierarchy. So we do constantly find ourselves in situations which are ambiguous. The leaders today are operating in this world. You will be leaders, many of you students here will be leaders who are operating in the VUCA world. So as a leader, what kind of attributes, what kind of personalities and behaviors must you be, displaying, demonstrating, so that you're able to take people along with you? It's really not a great secret, right? That innovation is going to be critical to be able to operate in the VUCA world. When I was told of the topic for this panel today by Dr. Sneha, fostering innovation through character, I did a double take because I said, when was the last time I used that term? When was the last time I used character in anything that I said? And I actually went back to the dictionary to just remind myself of what the term meant. The dictionary very sweetly said attributes, abilities, traits, also made a reference to reputation. I'd like to share with you here today from my experience as a professional over the past 14 years, and also through the experience that I've had in Mahindra more recently, the kind of aspects of an organization's character that I believe are driving towards fostering innovation. So 4 attributes really stand out in my mind. The first one being the willingness to share. Sharing knowledge, sharing experience, sharing resources. At Mahindra, we have what we call dynamic councils. They're dynamic because they are not part of anybody's job description. They are not mandated by anybody. There's no person who is above or below these councils. But there's a group of people who come from the same function across the various businesses that the Mahindra Group has, who come together to share their experience, to share their knowledge, to share the best practices, and to also offer resources to people, to their colleagues in other parts of the Mahindra Group, so that the synergies that we have as a group come to light, that all of us rise ahead and go beyond the threshold that we've set for ourselves. The other aspect, I strongly believe that we are trying to inculcate and trying very hard, is the willingness to learn. As a leader, the day you believe that you've learned everything, believe me, your leadership capability is going to come under question. So the willingness to learn from your peers, from your superiors, from your subordinates many times, from your customers, from your suppliers, as long as you keep that alive, that's what's going to make sure that you stay ahead on that curve for innovation. At Mahindra, we have recently begun something that's called an innovation workshop for senior leaders. The multiplier effect in any organization for driving any change, I'm sure many of you have read enough case studies or even worked across such situations. It is driven from the top. So making sure that our top leadership is aligned in terms of what innovation means at Mahindra is what we are trying to get them to embrace. Fourthly, the ability to appreciate others. The ability to see the novelty in the things that others are producing, others are putting together. I have just 2 days ago completed a very significant step in the process for what we call at Mahindra, the Mahindra Innovation Awards. This is an annual process where all of our 50 plus business units participate. We receive innovation projects entries from across all these businesses, 150,000 people across the world. And they go through a certain selection process to be declared winners. And Sneha talked a little while earlier about creativity. And as she rightly mentioned, it's not only creativity. We believe that the implementation of that creative concept is as critical to innovation, to making it a commercial success, and not only a success in terms of commercial terms, but also in terms of the value it gives to business and to the communities in which we participate. So, just to quickly share with you some of the factors on which we evaluate all these projects. Of course, uniqueness, because creativity, uniqueness, these are the crux of an innovation, right? But as importantly, impact, benefits. And not only by traditional metrics, not only by terms that will relate to revenues, profits, revenues from new products, R&D spends, or even patents, but value, business value in terms of brand value perhaps, customer loyalty perhaps, the customer advocacy that comes from them being connected with your brand and your values. All of this, we believe, is critical in terms of measuring benefits and impact from innovation. Thirdly, sustainability. Sustainability not only in terms of whether we are not harming the environment, but are we really making it better? Are we making sure that this innovation can thrive even if this founding team, which is definitely very passionate about this, were to step away from it? Will it still be able to live? That's our definition of sustainability. And finally, and as importantly, what kind of hurdles did these projects have to cross to be able to get here? What were the challenges and what were the learnings? If we don't learn from the kind of mistakes we make, the kind of hurdles we overcome, then we are not making it sustainable. So you see how it all links together. But that's not really the important part about how we do Mahindra Innovation Awards. The interesting part really is how we showcase them. So last year we began this, and I think a little too late, but it's better to be late, like they say, than never. So we began at the time that we actually present the awards, we also get all our winners to display their projects, to display and demo their projects. So we put them in front of their colleagues, their peers, their superiors, the top leadership, starting from Anand Mahindra and Keshav Mahindra, so that these people who are the ones that lend the corporate brand to us, they can see how our people are generating business value for the world. And it's another mechanism of recognizing our own people. So we get to appreciate what they've got. We get to learn from them. You would be surprised to find the number of conversations that get sparked and lead to collaborative projects from there onwards because of just the opportunity to be able to see what some other team has done. And the last one, the last attribute that I think has helped Mahindra so far is leading through thinking. I'm sure all of you have heard of the term thought leadership. Are you able to get people thinking about something new? Are you able to influence them? And like an esteemed panelist of mine was saying earlier, Mr. Shankar, not control them or direct them, but enroll them to your purpose. Can you set them thinking? Can you get them to bring top of your mind something that you are passionate about? Can you lead them in thought? So you don't have to be a person who has a certain status, a certain designation to be able to do that. You really have to be creating that thought that captures others' imagination. If we are able to bring these aspects of our personality together, I believe as an organization you will be able to bring character to it. A character that develops a culture that's engendering innovation continually and not only once in a while. So without further ado, I'd like to hand this back to Sneha. Thank you so much for taking the time. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Definitely is really beautifully put that forward for us. So I'd just like to sum up exactly, how I would view the thought of the process. I think it's really about value creation, as Maitri put it. It's about access to that value and also transforming it in such a manner that we are able to look at innovation. So an invention that has turned positivity, that has actually had transformation in society, is really an innovation. How many of us know what really happened on 11th of September 2001? So what happened? Can somebody just share with me what happened? Yeah?
Probably from terrorist point of view, it was also an
You
innovative
can get up
idea.
and speak.
It was an innovative idea to just crash a plane into some building so that millions of gallons of petrol, or you can say like the jet fuel, flows down the building and the entire building collapses.
Yeah, so do you think there was a lot of creativity that was involved? Do you think there was a lot of skill that was involved? A lot of partnering, a lot of collaboration, a lot of networking, lots of leverage of technology?
Probably.
We leveraged everything, right? Everything was leveraged in that particular incident, and each one of us knows about that incident, right? The man behind it, Osama bin Laden, where were the values? Where was the character? Was that character aligned to what the world would like us to think through? Was the character aligned to where we want to go tomorrow? Was it innovation? Certainly not. If it isn't aligned with what values we bring to the table, it is not innovation. I think it's a sparkling example of how you can be the most brilliant person, the most brilliant team, the best possible organization in the world, but if your values are not aligned, your character does not speak for you, there is no innovation. Innovation is in the context of adding value and making a difference to the world, right? I think from an organizational perspective, it is important to look at, value creation and innovation from a strategic, from a technology, from being basically embedded in the organization DNA. But I think what's very, very important over there is the cultural context, and what kind of culture and climate does that organization really foster? So that really becomes intrinsic, and I think if the organization gives you the opportunity to think differently, to innovate, to put your practical ideas in front of the world, that is when the cultural context is really, enhancing the capabilities of our teams, of our people, of our organizations, and they're able to really foster innovation. At IBM, the values that we really, stand for, and I come from IBM, we have 3 intrinsic values. The first one is really about client centricity. The second one says it's innovation that matters for IBM and for the world. And the third one is trust and personal responsibility in everything that we do. So if we were to really look at it, innovation is something which is inbuilt within the DNA of the organization. And when you have innovation built in the DNA of the organization, that's when you see that innovation is at its best. You see patents and patents, you see adding value to the world, you see transformation, and you change proactively to the changing business dynamics of the world. Thank you.
I think I've been having fun from the moment I set foot over here. And thank you, Maithili, and thank you, Rachna, for setting the context. And I'd like to build upon what they said. What Maithili spoke about was VUCA. What's it all about? Where does innovation happen? Close your eyes for a moment. Think about the Kerala boat races. What do you see over there? 2 boats, 6 people in each, a coxswain, and what are they trying to do? What are they trying to do? Win the race, competition, compete. Can they innovate? Yes. To what extent? Incremental. Can they create a breakthrough? But that also is innovation. I think it's the first learning that we need to have, that innovation happens at any instant, at any point in time. However, as Rachna put it, and we at Anand have tried to bring it aloud in 3 points, is we classify or we certify anything as innovated at Anand if, number 1, there is improved safety from before God. 2, it ought to be ethical. 3, it ought to have moral values. That's it. Innovation occurs in these 3 tick box images. It has to comply to all 3. Then only we can certify it as innovation. Thank you for putting a fantastic example. Let's go to the scenario of a white water rafting. 4 people in a boat, in a raft. What happens? Is there a team? Does the team have a leader? Is the leader constant? It changes per context, right? That's the other value. Understanding of innovation we need to have. Coming back to my thoughts that I wanted to share with you is, we talked about character. And character, as Maithili talked about, was attribute, behavior, trait. And it is value-based. And the 3 core values for an innovator, whether an organization or an individual, are respecting others' point of view at face value. If you want to challenge him, don't do that. Try to understand the context in which he is putting forth his view. Try to understand his intent, whether it qualifies safety, ethical and moral standards. And then what are the experiences? Because experiences are insights. That's where innovation happens. That's point number 1. Point number 2, as a leader, our role is to synthesize, to create value from diverse values by challenging assumptions, getting insights from uncommon sources. As the first movie, the clip was put up, there was an uncommon source. How, if we were to go into that tea boy's life, possibly we would be able to innovate something is smiley. And most important is observe minute details of the behavior of the people, of the community where you want to innovate. The last is influence rather than control. We say walk the talk. What does it mean? In simple words of my Guru, Padma Shri, Dr. Professor Shoji Shiva, it is do and demonstrate. Just do it. Show people how to do it. Conduct experiments to trigger curiosity. Just go back. In my age, I think we didn't have clays. Today's children have clays and Lego dots, etc. So you can fool around a lot. So experimentation is a must. And then you need to explore new value. So if you can focus on these 3 components of character, I would believe, that's my belief, that we can create value. So what are these? These are thoughts. We need to move on to the realm of words and deeds. So to create new value, you need to evolve actionable thoughts. Thoughts without action have no value. As you may be creative, but if you do not convert it into a deliverable service, I'd like to call it as service, not a product, because the insurance people, LICs and Max Life, they always tell, we are introducing a new product. I think 7 years ago I got fast, hey, how does this product look like? So there's nothing but a paper. You introduce a new scheme and it's a product. So what we are looking at is service basically. So to create new value, you need to start with a larger, noble goal which affects the community. And coming from an automotive background, what I understand by my experience is, you have a consumer all of us. There is a tier 1 supplier or a customer for tier 1's Mahindra. They produce all the vehicles and SUVs and MUVs. And then there is a tier 1 component supplier. So if the goal is set for changing something in a community of the link between two, either tier 2 and tier 1, tier 1 and the customer, or customer and consumer, that's where innovation happens. So we need to focus on that area. How do you focus? Please visit the website and search out for the fishbowl principle of MIT, Dr. Professor Shoji Shiba. What does it say? It says first-hand experience. Compare with view from outside. We are good at judging, oh, that chair is bad, it's uncomfortable. But have we gone and sat on that chair and compared it, what features it has and what features it doesn't have? We don't do that. We just want to make a judgment. So compare with the view from outside and create a unique function, not a feature. In this age of materialization through automotives and white goods, we are always looking out for the Bluetooth connectivity on our cars, right? Or this, what is that, action thing on our TV, so you move like this, the TV switches. We are looking at the feature. Are we looking at the function? No. During OT, we had a small connect. That what are people doing? Are we overbuilding our products? Over-featuring our products? We need to think deeper. So therefore, you need to create a unique function. And how do you do this? That's where I wanted to shock everybody, including Dr. Snehan, who thought, who is right in saying technology is at the base of innovation. But my perspective, my humble submission, though I'm a hardcore R&D engineer, manufacturing specialist, whatever it is, but I have started believing in the last 4 years that technology comes last. Technology comes when you have identified the function that I need to service my consumer. How to meet it? That's where technology comes. It has to be appropriate, and as we in manufacturing have started coining this word, is a feature delivering a function. That's where technology comes in. But it comes after setting a noble goal, after jumping into the fishbowl to get an experience, to identify what function we need, and then create value for money. This, I would believe, is the character of an innovator per se, not the character of an organization. An organization will foster something else. So what is the character? Thinking style. What I would like to propose is, please think deeper after you have seen something and uttered something. Because we are responsive people. So somebody expresses an opinion. What is behind that opinion is an experience. And behind that experience is a motive. You cannot see it. You need to connect with that person to find out what has been his motive in sharing that opinion. Mindset, you can't see. Behavior, yes, you can see. I'm wearing a jacket, I'm standing like this, I'm standing like this. You can see my behavior. Outcome is also known. But do you know my mindset? No way. So you need to connect with people, jump into the fishbowl, come and stand with me, talk to me, then you'll understand. Last, today we are having a panel discussion. Sorry that I've possibly taken 3.5 minutes. We agreed to 3. But my biggest connect to learning is the process of learning, not so much as learning. And my ideal is Sri Adi Shankara, 480. What did he say? You get knowledge from a guru or your gurus, from textbooks, but do you get learning? So what is learning? Learning is trying to apply it in front of your guru, in front of your community, and experimenting. That is learning. Then you need to get to the level of appreciation. What is appreciation? Step number 3. Appreciation is, I know how to use a tool. You give a child a hammer, a screwdriver, a cutting plier, and a soldering gun, what will he do? The moment he is able to put it to use and get value, he appreciates. So that is the skill he has developed. Then you need to have devotion. I need to get value from That's the mindset. And then passion, which leads to action. And then Adi Shankara says you hear music. And music, as interpreted by so many gurus, comes in any form. Music, they say, for the instrumentalist who plays, is not the performance he gives, but the resonance of the 7 strings he gets behind the stage. That is music to him. What is music to a grandmother or a mother serving at home without guests? It's possibly the husband and children burping, but we say, oh, we can't burp. That's music to them. So we need to identify what is our music. And for that, we definitely need to go through these 5 stages. And let us try to do that in this panel discussion, is my humble thought.
It's a privilege and pleasure to be here with you. My association with the school, if I can trace, goes back really long way. In terms of knowing 2 key leaders from here, Mr. Arvind Sachdev from Aisha days where I worked, and Mr. Shailen Kumar at National Dairy Development Board, who was my one-on-one manager. I'm talking of 1991. I really cherish some of those associations. I have gained a lot from those, and therefore it's really a pleasure, to be here amidst you. I will draw on as a practitioner today, and my endeavor would be to go back, look at the organizations that I have worked with. I've worked for National Dairy Development Board, worked with Aisha Tractors, worked for GE for about 15 years in multiple roles in GE Capital, in GE Supply Chain, GE Energy, and I'm currently with Max Life Insurance. So I will, draw on some of my experiences, some that I've been witness to, more in the context of innovation. But I'm also going to take this opportunity to beautifully draw out from these organizations how innovation links to character and how that is key to sustaining that as a culture in the organizational context and also in the context of individuals, which is the topic for today. With interest, I was reading a survey and some studies, and some very interesting statistics got my attention. So one set of statistics that got my attention was the average lifespan of a top 500 company in United States of America is, any guesses? Average lifespan of a top 500 company in America. Any guesses?
50 years.
50? 10? Top 500 company. Sorry? 4? That would be very short for a top 500 company. So it's 40 years. 40 years for a top 500 company. Imagine, look at the life cycle, please. Top 500 companies on an average surviving for 40 years. In Europe, it was about 15 years, so even shorter. Now, I've been fortunate to have worked for a company, General Electric, which was listed on Dow Jones Index in 1896. Happens to be today the only surviving company on that index since 1896. So I will draw on some examples of how innovation and how character beautifully help companies work for decades and centuries, in this case, GE. I would also, as I mentioned earlier, link to some experiences with National Dairy Development Board and Aisha Tractors. We'll talk about them. I've also seen Mr. Shailen Kumar come in. It's a privilege, sir, to have you here. So if you look at the statistics, you can see how financial performance does not necessarily guarantee sustenance. It's very evident from this data, and there's more that we've seen. It does not necessarily guarantee sustenance. You will also agree that character, by definition, and come to think of character in the context of individuals, come to think of character in the context of organizations. Character essentially would link to culture, would link to values. And therefore, character also is not built overnight. Character is built over a longer period of time. Definition. And therefore, while innovation, and we have several examples of innovations in the context of individuals, but sustaining those through an organization and creating a culture therefore requires character, because you want to continue that over a long period of time. And therefore the linkage, very clearly, is fostering innovation through character. That is how we create an environment, that is how we create an ecosystem that nurtures it, that self-sustains it. You know, one of the biggest challenges that we face today, and I was discussing with the co-panelists a short while ago, is we all understand, especially in organizations, the nuances of innovation. We understand what it takes. The biggest challenge perhaps that we face is how do we create an environment that nurtures it, that encourages it. And that is not easy, because character is not easy. It requires toil, it requires struggle, it requires rising over self. And I can beautifully, go back and look at my career and look at the organizations that one has worked with. In the context of National Dairy Development Board, when I think of, Dr. Kurian, for example, and you all, I could be repeating some of this, but worth taking a look. When I heard Anil talk about, Mahatma Gandhi in the context of innovation, Satyagraha, the salt movements. When I think of Dr. Kurian, how he converted the innovative practices of Mahatma Gandhi carry the same trait, the same DNA. The Satyagraha, the salt movement, the non-cooperation, the Quit India, look at all the innovative practices, and all of those that had scale, that rallied the masses. They require character for people to link to those. And the same practices apply to organizations as well. When we rise above ourselves as individuals and connect to cause, in the context of Aisha, when I look back, I'm talking about 20 years back, those days, and two practices that come to my mind very vividly. One, and I heard an earlier speaker talking about kaizens, which was then practiced at Aisha. Any improvement was coined as a Japanese term as kaizen. But more importantly, creating a culture, treating the other person as a client. To me, that was the DNA of that character. When you begin to treat the other person as a client, the words that were used in that context in those years were delight. How do you delight the customer? In the context of total quality management, it was called TQM at that point of time. How do you delight your customer? What is intrinsic is you are treating the other person as a client, and his or her needs, his or her aspirations superimpose on your own needs. So that whole DNA of committing to a purpose, a model beyond yourself, is profound to creating culture of innovation, is profound to fostering innovation in this manner. I saw that at play in Aisha. I was amazed today, more recently, about a year and a half back when I was in GE, and we were debating in General Electric whether it is appropriate for us to link our financial rewards, increments and bonuses, to ratings. And GE is a merit-driven company and has some very strong foundation on this. But when I look at a company like Aisha, which 20 years back, at that point in time was small, this debate was on in 1992 in Aisha, whether we should link financial rewards to ratings of employees at the end of the year. Will it take us away? Will it take us away from the core of our feedback and development focus that managers should have in developing employees, teams? Because the focus shifts to what you get based on the rating. And therefore, will it therefore interfere with the true purpose of development? And it was amazing to see the kind of intense discussion that I saw happening in our organization at that point of time in 1980. Again, another example of how companies rise above small transactional day-to-day stuff and commit to a cause, to a purpose. And I've seen Anil Sasdev obviously playing that over decades for several years, several situations. I'm also quoting here Bill Gates, where he says, Success is a lousy teacher. Success is a lousy teacher. It seduces smart people into thinking they can't lose. It seduces smart people into thinking they can't lose. And that is where the learning stops. That is where humility is replaced with arrogance in many situations of individuals as well as organizations, and we have a challenge building up for ourselves. And apply this, ladies and gentlemen, to the context of an individual. How a child, when he or she is born, look at the ability to learn, look at the amount of curiosity that a child has, and is learning every day up to a certain age. And you can also vividly see how the child gets conditioned in our midst to gradually reduce that pace over a period of time and begins to get conditioned to what he or she sees around. Similar environments exist in organizations as well. Think of a small startup which is young, which is hungry, which has to survive and therefore has to move with speed. There could be one or two people doing multiple roles. See the organization growing, how departments come up, how layers are formed. And I'm not taking a position this is wrong, please don't get me wrong here. This is the natural process of growth, and we have to watch vividly how we let go of our innovating, our learning ability over a period of time. We tend to get accustomed to more incremental growth because batons pass from one department to another, from one layer to another, and this happens year after year. There is some sort of a corporate immune system that we tend to create unless we are very alive to this and break down bureaucracy. And I was witness to this in GE when Jack Welch, when he took over in 1981, and he was nicknamed as Neutron Jack for the kind of work he did around that time in terms of selling businesses, buying businesses from 22, 23 layers of organization, reducing that to just 5 across the globe. When he challenged all his leadership teams and said, from the CEO to the front end, you can only have 5 layers, no more. Find a way, please, to broadband and get to 5 layers, because he felt at every level, at every layer, we were creating bureaucracy, because people would tend to create their own measures of success. They would resist change, and this was coming in the way of organization ultimately delivering to the end customer. It was a very vivid example of how GE went after this. So management at some point of time, by design, willy-nilly, without us knowing, tends to get separated from innovation, which should be happening. They should ideally be two parts of the same coin. Peter Drucker talked about this in the context of entrepreneurship and talked about this challenge. And we all, in the work organization and context, need to be extremely mindful of that. So much so that we create a dominant culture of avoiding risk over a period of time. Management reports a lot of times are tuned to meet board requirements. A lot of times, and there is this story about how a particular shop, and I hear this is in the United States, when the CEO was to visit, got the entire store repainted, hired some new staff before the CEO of that company visited. We don't know whether they hired customers as well, but that's what one hears. Now come to think of an ecosystem of that kind, where for an internal leader to visit, what kind of showcasing are we doing? We are moving ourselves from reality. And one of the first and foremost tasks that leaders have is to create candor, is to encourage candor, ensure that there is free flow of information, and ensure that all the resources are channelized to meeting the end customer goals, and nothing comes in the way of it. And it is also incumbent, therefore, at senior most levels, particularly leaders and boards, to ensure that we create that kind of environment. And that is where culture and character become extremely pertinent. Examples of IBM failing to see the rise of desktop at one point of time, Sony losing portable music and entertainment market, are examples where you need to be not just ahead, you need to be connected to the external market on an ongoing basis. And to do this, we need to create an ecosystem, and I talked about that earlier. And in the context of GE, there are different ways that the organization does this. One, this is considered to be one of the company values. So imagination and courage is a value in GE. Leaders who demonstrate and role model imagination and courage are leaders who are recognized and rewarded. And they in turn are expected to do the same across the company. There is a program called LIG, which I have attended, which is Leadership, Innovation and Growth. This program again is aimed at fostering innovation, telling leaders why is this important. There used to be a practice in GE long back, which is still applied, but very prominent about 15 years back, called work out. And this practice required, for any issues that a team is facing, you come together. You come together as a team. That small team needs to come together. The manager needs to state what the issue, what the problem is. And the manager is expected to walk out of the room so that people who are impacted, they in that room, in those 2-3 hours, have to figure out a solution. They will also figure out what the timelines of the solution will be. They will also figure out who will do what. The manager is then invited in so that the manager can provide necessary approvals in case it requires additional resources or process changes. But all of that has to happen with speed, sense of urgency, and within those 2-3 hours. They all have to walk out when the doors open with a solution, and they are expected to implement. Now imagine if this is done across an organization. In smaller groups, you can immediately see what kind of solution focus is there across the organization at different levels, in different pockets, and this game is played every day. You're not necessarily waiting for a big review. You're not necessarily waiting for a big crisis to happen to be able to solve. This is how culture is created. These are some very vivid examples of how innovation can be fostered.
We take the questions and then discuss more.
Okay, I think that's possible. So I can wrap by saying the biggest challenge of practicing, biggest challenge of creating an ecosystem is where leaders differentiate themselves from traditional managers. If leaders can create an environment where people can apply their thinking, imagination, have the courage to practice, resources are provided, hurdles are removed out of the way, I think leaders would have served their purpose, whether in the context of an organization or individuals. Thank you.
All of you, if I look back at last 40 minutes of all my panelists talking about different aspects of innovation, I made a mental note to myself that if you think about all the competencies required at the individual level, or what is the ecosystem in terms of organization to be doing, from safety, ethical, moral values, fishbowl, higher purpose, devotion, these innovation awards where Mentally talked about it, it's like a snowballing effect that when you create that ecosystem or create that environment where innovation is talked about, more innovation happens and more innovation, and it's just a multiplier effect like that. I want to throw a question at you. We'll have a couple of questions. In the interest of time, I want to then keep it open for the audience. So I'll just ask 1 or 2 questions to the panel. And then, does it sound good? I would like to hear more from the audience rather than us talking and sharing more knowledge. We want to experiment more. Let me ask you, how many of us think India is quite innovative? India, our nation, our motherland, is quite innovative. 10, 12 of us? More, 15? True. In fact, we have a lot of people here and a lot of innovation going on. Perhaps still our IITs are 222nd in the QS ranking and 232nd and 285th IIT Kharagpur and 294th is because maybe perhaps that what we innovate may not be the success criteria out there. So if if I were to leave this, I would like to ask this question to all my panelists, anyone and everyone can take this question and answer. That if we have the bandwidth, we have the creativity, we are the people to innovate. Why is it that it's the Steve Jobs doing the coming up with the iPhone and the iPad and revolutionized the music industry and telecom industry? Why is it that Bill Gates, and why is it that in the garage that things happen in the US? And why is it that we are not considered? Maybe we are, we know that, but we are not considered in the outside world as those innovators. Is it, where are we, what is that DNA, what is that mindset at individual level, at organizational level that we need to build together? Why is it that our IITs are through 222nd? And that's really that we need to discuss that how do we create that ecosystem and environment at the individual level? How do you inspire for this noble cause? I'll leave that question to the panelists because I think I've asked a very encompassing question, and then I would like to have the audience ask questions and answer. Thank you. Anyone? So again, my question is that if we think India is innovative, we think we have the brain power and the intellectual horsepower, why is it that out there we are still talking about we need to be more innovative? These are the things. What is that DNA that India needs to have? Thank you.
I'll go first. I don't think there is, like you said, Sneha, any dearth of imagination at all in India. There's no dearth of creativity. There's no dearth of brain power. Perhaps we have the smartest people on the planet in this small country. All of us have heard of the term Jugaad innovation. It's been revered, it's been held up as the Indian brand of innovation. But it's also recently come under a lot of flack because what Jugaad does not do is ensure that things can be sustained, can be made scalable. So I think where the lacuna is really, and perhaps other panelists can answer to this as well, is really whether we are bringing all our stakeholders together and aligning them. Are we really trying out what we create in enough different circumstances to see that these innovations can be scaled up? And unless there is a scalability element to what we create, there will not be an innovation that comes out of India at the global level. So it's not as if it's not happening, but are we really bringing those stakeholders to the same table and getting that credit from them so that it becomes acceptable and becomes the norm at the global level?
Thank you. Anyone else?
Looking at another angle, what I would like to say, the 360-degree spherical angle, not the 360-degree view as we say in a flat piece of paper, spheroidal view. What I think we miss out is answering or finding ourselves a question, finding answer to the question, how much passionate the leader is, how much passionate his leadership team is at the top level. Because we say a leader is seen by his followers. So he needs to take responsibility of sustainability. One of the key issues that we have seen across startup companies, SMEs, even large scale, innovation is far away from sustainability. That's the fact. However, what would be the true reason over there? True reason seems to be, I may be wrong, but my thought on this is that innovation, to do innovation is fashionable at the leadership level. I am the owner of the company. I delegate innovation to somebody. That's, I think, the killing effect of Jugaad. Jugaad is the first attempt at creativity, and in my definition, it's a prototype. If it is scaled up to meet a new function of the people at large, right? To move up the Maslow's pyramid. That's where innovation sits. Therefore, I fully agree with what Gayatri said, sustainability. The issue that I'm proposing is how to make it sustainable. Definitely not by looking at it as a fashion statement. Thank you. Or delegate it to be a bit more powerful. The moment a leader delegates innovation, it's the end of innovation, is what I would say.
Yeah. So I would draw on Vijay Govindarajan for this, one of the most influential thinkers of our times. He was the professor in residence on innovation in GE in the years that I was at GE. And so here is how he shared his perspective on this. He and his colleague went around surveying some managers and asking them, what is innovation? And almost in all cases, innovation was seen as creativity. Vijay has a different view on this, and Vijay Govindarajan says, innovation is really not just creativity. Creativity is an important component of it. Ideation is an important component of it, but it's creativity and execution. And then he went on to say, this is creativity, not just creativity plus execution. This is creativity multiplied by execution. So it's creativity into execution in terms of the impact. And there is a difference. With a sum, with addition, there is a certain impact. With a multiplication, it's a different impact. And this is where organizations have a role to play. In India, unfortunately, organizations and governments together. The execution, therefore, while we have had talent, and there's a lot of Indian talent that has done wonders elsewhere, outside in other countries, America and elsewhere. And we've been, witnessing all of that over the last few decades. However, in India, the need for resources, the need to incubate an environment which provides the resources to execute, takes courage to execute, unfortunately has not been there. That's something that we need to work on as a country and in organizations as well. Our focus, and some of that is understandable in the context of an emerging market, our focus on today's success, short-term success is so much, and that's absolutely, as I said, understandable in the context of an emerging economy. Some of that is critical. However, we do need to think longer term and focus on executing some of the big ideas and building scale, as I heard other panelists say. I think those are crucial aspects that we've not focused on as a country, as many organizations also.
Very, very innovative. I do agree with the sustainability angle, the scalability angle, and I think that it's important for us to have that kind of fostering of innovation. However, I think we've been operating in a very isolated environment. There is a silo, and we're operating in a silo environment. With due respect to people who do not probably look at technology as a very big plus, but if you look at technology, it's actually bringing us all together today. The world is becoming a very small place. It's becoming one integrated whole. And it is possible for us to now go out and shout out our innovation. We have the right ingredients in terms of our character, the kind of the climate with which we've been brought up, the values with which we intrinsically in India have been brought up. And they want to focus on learning and innovation from the beginning. As we said, that there are many innovative things that have taken seed in India. But it's about reaching out to the world, translating it to the world, and bringing about that change, bringing about that transformation. If you go on to the social media today and you throw out a question, and you can experiment this because we've done that in IBM, you go and throw out a question regarding innovation on the social media. Evaluate how many responses you get and how many responses you will get from Indians. You'll find the count to be, it is unimaginable. So we have the ingredients within us. We know we are there. It's just about reaching out and making a difference.
Thank you. I would make it open for the audience to ask questions, and then after a few questions, we are going to break out into groups, and each panelist would be embedded in each group. So we'll break out into 4 groups and discuss and debate some of these questions further, and then come back together and summarize. But before that, I'll take a few questions from the audience. You have the
leadership program. We have been long talking about innovation, but in my opinion, I have a different point of view that we have to go deeper. Actually, we are talking about creativity, innovation, but we don't talk about curiosity. Because until and unless curiosity is there and we measure and sustain that curiosity throughout, so because curiosity leads to innovation, correct me if I'm wrong, but until and unless that eagerness or the enthusiasm or the zeal or the one thought on which you have to build on something doesn't let you sleep, is not there in you, that I don't feel like that any creativity or execution will help you do that. So my question is that how do organizations measure curiosity, if there are any measuring parameter, and if yes, how do they sustain it? Thank you.
Anyone?
Attribute. There are other things in the value chain that one needs to look at. Curiosity helps an individual start the search. That's it. It's a very, very base element or an atom or a molecule which helps you go on searching it every time. And as Mr. Shailesh Kumar talked about Vijay Govindarajan, ideation is romantic. There is no failure. The moment you get into the realm of execution, it's 100% failure. And execution also has a halo around it. Who does execution in manufacturing plant? Some guy in technology services, some guy in maintenance, some guy in facilities, not the guy who is sitting in a corporate office. So curiosity is a base thing, but I don't think you can measure it.
Yeah, so it's the spark possibly which can probably kindle innovation going forward. But there are beliefs that people, so curiosity can lead you to have certain beliefs. For example, thinking the impossible or going beyond the realm of typical possibility, what is true today, thinking beyond that possibly, being a complete risk taker, strategic risk taking, not really risk taking for the sake of risk taking, having informed judgment on what will work and what can probably not work, and then having the belief in your ability, the fact that there is sustainability in what we are trying to execute. So curiosity does give you the baseline, but when it turns into, as Michael Pandas just said, when it turns into actual execution and value to the human, value to the world, I would say, that's when it is sustainable, and that's when it's innovation. Otherwise, it's just the trick.
Just to add on to what Rachna is saying, interesting thing about creativity. Creativity happens when there is high time pressure. It becomes problem solving, firefighting. There is a purpose. You get people, and I think India has been a laggard on this to move out of it. In India, we like to celebrate a guy who is a problem solver or a firefighter, not a strategist. That's just. But when you look at creativity under low time pressure, who is going to create that? The organization, and that's the character of an organization that we are trying to talk about here. You need to have space for an individual to go into an exploratory realm. Explore, try to find something, but be ready to grab something that you are not looking for. That is how I am able to relate to your question and say that it's a very, very basic trigger or a spark, as you rightly put it.
Ujjwal, I'd like to answer your question at two levels. One is at the organizational level. So what can organizations do to ensure that curiosity is not stifled? The other is really at the individual level, and I referred to a little bit of it during my little talk earlier. At the organizational level, at Mahindra, for example, I'm sure all of you have been part of brainstorming sessions. So at Mahindra, we keep experimenting with what different forms of brainstorming can be. And what is a brainstorm? It's really about asking questions, right? Asking questions of ourselves, of the kind of issues we deal with, of the kind of constraints we believe we are working under. And oftentimes you're just going to flip that notion and say, okay, if this constraint were not there, what are the possible solutions we might be able to go on? You can also reverse the situation. Sometimes creativity comes out of constraint-based thinking. Sometimes, you're told, well, all the resources are at your disposal, and yet you may not reach an ideal, innovative solution. Whereas if you were to put in some constraints on purpose, you might be able to come up with something that's far more effective, far more cost friendly, far more far-reaching in terms of how many people it can affect. So that's at the organizational level, and very consciously we try to make these kind of sessions which leave aside judgment for a while, which leave aside the value judgment to say this idea is good or bad, and we try to inculcate these mechanisms into our day-to-day working. On the individual level, I'll go back to what I said earlier about thought leadership. So if you are curious, put out a paper, take it to your superior, share it with your peers, table it at the next team meeting, and let's just get the people thinking. Why not ask more questions, not just of the environment we are in, but also people who we're working with. So these are two ways that I can think of that we try to emulate in our lives, at least within the.
Yeah, I'd like to just add to that. In IBM, of course, besides really looking at the research organizations where their primary focus is on innovation, even the smallest of things are really kind of brainstormed together. We call it Imagine the Possibilities, and it is a tool that has also been developed. It's called the jamming tool, wherein all IBMers across the world will jam on a particular topic, and you will think through that what is it that we want to do next? Is it what focus do we want to bring to that particular topic that we're talking about? And that actually, it's actually about imagining the possibilities, because you get all kinds of thoughts, all kinds of inputs, and then you kind of put all that together and you say, okay, if we were to do this action, it would foster this kind of a reaction.
Right.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Now we'll take one more question, and whatever question there is, Sailesh, I would request him to answer, because he has a beautiful Urdu poem, and I wanted him to say that. So whatever question you ask, he's going to answer with that Urdu poem. So please ask one question, and I would request him to answer first, and of course the other co-panelists, because it's very relevant that we were talking at the time of a tea break, and it makes a point of innovation. So one more question.
6-7 months back, I read an article on LinkedIn which was talking about innovation, creativity, and competitiveness. So in that article, it was written that if there is too much of competition at organization, you somehow lose the creativity and innovation at the organization level. So my question is, what's the relationship, or what's the degree of the relationship between competitiveness and innovation and creativity?
Sailesh,
There's obviously a context to what you just asked. So there isn't really a one size fits all, but yes, I agree that in several situations I have seen where there's an excessive focus on shorter term results, quarterly results, financial performance, competitiveness, as you said, that tends to take people away from focusing on longer term and strategy. And again, Vijay Govindarajan talks about it in the context of 3 buckets. Where he talks about ideas in the first bucket, and most organizations actually tend to get obsessed with performance today. Performance and performing excellently today, versus the second bucket he talks about where you should shed and let go of what is obsolete. And we don't do a good job of that. And the third bucket where you're really thinking 15, 20 years, so 1 or 2 big ideas that each organization or each individual should be thinking about, the third bucket. The later 2 buckets therefore tend to suffer, because the focus on the first bucket, where it's about excellence today, particularly in terms of competing in the market today, your results to the analysts, your result to the board, your financial performance and bonus to the employees today, tends to therefore douse on the creativity that could otherwise be nurtured. However, there can be a good blend of this if in the organization we purposely as leadership teams in the organization create a culture of candor. I heard someone talk about curiosity. Those really have to be created, nurtured at all levels and rewarded, recognized. So it has to come into not just the hiring system, it has to get into rewards and recognition. It has to get into leadership messaging all the time communicated. That is how you can blend and balance this. But I agree with you on that. that this could be a big challenge otherwise, and you do feel that you are living from day to day, so focused on competitive, and you could be succeeding and yet not be succeeding from a longer term perspective. And to Snail's point, I'll share the Urdu lines that I think resonate and to this feeling of sometimes how, in spite of our efforts, all that we do, we could be hitting some hurdles and feel this whole thing could be futile. It's like you could be feeling like a loner sometimes driving this agenda, which is so important, so valuable actually for everyone, the entire organization, world, society, country, and all of that. So in that context, here is how this poet shares his sentiments. He says, "हर राह पे शमा जलाना है मेरा काम, हर राह पे शमा जलाना है मेरा काम, तेवर क्या है हवा के ये मैं देखता नहीं."
Or every year, but eventually when that innovation sparks and you bring it to the world, it just about evens out and maybe becomes much higher. So you recognize those people as people who made a difference to the world, and whether it is the short term or the long term, balancing is the key.
Whether the people within the organization first competition or the organization believes in first competition, saying as Shailesh said, look at only quarterly results. PBT plus minus 2% is the only accepted norm. And competition, I don't think if it comes in a healthy way to trigger something, to inspire something, competition inspires. And one has to look at what values you are chasing. The example that I can share in my personal life, working for Anand Group, is Mr. Anand has never talked of, please innovate, please go into innovation. No. All that he says is, what are my values? My value, he says, I expect you to behave, he says, that take care of the people in the organization, take care of the property of the organization, as in land, building, open land, machines, equipment, and partnerships. Whether it is customer, supplier, or collaborator. So when he says you do this, so each company within Anand is trying to excel at all of these things. There is competition, but there is no judgment saying, okay, company number one, you have done best, all the others set up useless for us. Never. So what is the leader's role is to find out what did company one do, an organization one do to foster innovation vis-a-vis the other company. I think we need to look at it a bit more simply rather than looking at metrics. I think we have got into this ranking system and that hurts many a time. So you're right, if there's competition like we need to list 1 to 100, then there's going to be, you are killing innovation.
Thank you. I just realized that with 4 of us on the panel and myself, the most innovative word that I can think of which connects all of us is, guess what? Which is that word? A name. I just realized it while you was talking. Yes. Do you know our backgrounds a little bit? Whatever our dear student Priya introduced us. What is the common word across us which is symbolizes innovation? A name. Anand. Give him a big hand. Anand. I tell you how. Shailendraji is smiling. Anand, NDDP, Dr. Kurian, cooperative, experiment in innovation. Correct or not? My background, IRMA, Institute of Rural Management. Anand. So Mr. Shailesh and myself, Anand. He is representing Anand Group of companies. Who is the innovator here, the leader? Mr.
Everybody is an innovator.
Anand. Okay, Mr. Anand. And Anand Mahindra. And in IBM, do you have anyone in Anand?
I consume the products that Anand.
Or you create environment for Anand.
That's right. But even without the jokes, what I have started believing in it, in my experience, and in fact, my biodata is a little outdated with 16 years of experience all around in the US and India. That is that Anand, it's the inner joy workplace is it's the curiosity for learning. It is, but that's inner joy and happiness. And in fact, even all the conversations that I have with my students show that passion, show that enthusiasm, and that would happen when you have a noble cause. So it's all these things that connect to us, and even our Bhagavad Gita says, tomorrow we'll be on a panel on Bhagavad Gita. It's that inner joy, that Anandamaya Kosha that we have in our bodies, which brings us to do our work with passion, with devotion, with the noble cause, that we are all trying to put the character and the creativity in that part of innovation. And with those comments, please show me a show of hands. We've put some flip charts which we have talked about as I set the context. That innovation at the individual level, innovation at organization level, impact of technology, and how do you create that mindset for our nation on innovation. Any other, these were just tentative questions to explore, but I want to see from the audience if there is anything or something or a sub-question that you want to discuss in smaller groups that for the next 20-25 minutes. Any other questions which are more burning questions? Our colleagues from SAP. I know we shouldn't say SAP, we should say SAP, correct? Yes. Other questions which are more burning than what we have put out? Innovation, character. I like this thing. It's creativity plus execution. It's creativity multiplied by execution. Right? And I would add to that the nobleness or the nobility of the goals. I would say nobility of the goals multiplied by creativity, multiplied by execution.
And how it translates in terms of adding value to the world.
And adding value to the world, to the society, not just to us, not just to the organization, but creating that positive value for the world at large. Any other questions you would like to explore apart from what we have laid out for you? Yes, Silky, Shreya, yes. Human Resource Leadership Program?
Yes. So there is this question. We have been having this discussion. I have been having this discussion with my roommates for the past 2 days now. And if I don't ask it right now, I will be all the more troubled throughout the session. So basically, whenever I speak to people about technology, they tell me about or innovation. They talk about urban areas, they talk about IITs, they talk about all these things, but what about the rural areas? Are we even touching them? So maybe we can discuss as one of the sub-questions. So I would just want to have your opinion or your thoughts on what are we doing, or going back to Sneha Nam's question, is the world really aware of what is happening in the rural part of the nation? What are we going to bring out the innovation in them? Or are we even listening, or are we even paying attention to what kind of innovative technologies they are using?
Sure, so it could be a sub-question in the technology.
Youth capital of the world, so undoubtedly the innovation happens here. Also, we are one of the oldest civilizations, so our culture is really deep-rooted. And talking about culture, probably I think the culture difference here and the Western countries, we are a little more modest, a little more inhibitive when it comes to putting our ideas across. So, do you think the culture also plays a very critical role in developing that character that leads to innovation? And how this character can be modified in our organization so that people could actually come up and throw their ideas open in front of everybody? I would like to.
So is that something that we can deal with in the
organization level? But we never talk about creativity and innovation at school level. Maybe I feel that we need to impart, as an organization, we need to strive to impart this creativity and innovation from school level, and what are we doing?
Sure, HR education, that's a whole different huge topic that we can deal with.
So we started off the discussion with how there is a gap in the vision with senior leaders and employees as we trickle down. So what we figured out is culture plays a major role in that aspect also. The responsibility lies at each level, and at each level there is the character needs to be transferred at each level so that there is a clear vision in all the employees at all levels. So that is where culture is a major role that plays. The other aspect we discussed is about how the definition of rewards is changing nowadays to foster innovation. Rewards, financials are a part of rewards, but they are not the only thing. There are other aspects which Mahindra is doing, for example, to foster innovation through different rewards and recognition systems. Then other thing that we talked about is how talent acquisition, there has to be a threshold of competency first that we measure, but a major part of it lies with the person. We know that the person will be able to absorb the values of the culture. So both these things have to be balanced out and carefully measured while we're doing talent acquisition or getting people in our companies. So this is what we...
Thank you. Technology we leverage so as to foster innovation. So we began the discussion by talking about that technology is an enabler that helps us to know what are the things that have already been invented and need not be reinvented. So our energies and our efforts would not go waste. The next thing that we came up was with technology is necessary to deliver the idea, and thinking how to leverage the technology in the right place at the right time is what makes a lot of difference. And also that technology fosters a platform to be curious, and improvisation. Then the last thought we came up with was improvisation and process improvements at society level could be the innovation at the highest level. So we don't need any technology for that. I mean, we can improvise on the processes themselves. So that will be the innovation at the highest level.
How can an individual contribute to fuel creativity and innovation in organization? So this discussion was quite instigating, and Ma'am quoted a very good example on IBM call center, that how an individual innovation lead to a complete organization way. So there was a guy who loves the music and tried to enjoy this music, and the way he initiated an innovation that observed it. So I would say that it's not only, innovation not only happens in a very established or a normal company. Ability of bringing idea to the world, it's also matter for innovation.
What ma'am was telling us was that she was 2 days back at the Pune campus of IBM, where she observed one guy was sitting very coolly in front of his system, listening to music, enjoying his music, while others were actually in a complete hassle to complete their work and complete the queries that they were getting. So what she did was, she was observing him from a distance, the way he was actually working. How can he actually manage his hobbies in between his work? So what that guy was doing was, he was actually framing some typical answers to the very frequently asked questions. And whenever that particular question came up, what he was doing was just copying the answer and pasting it there, and modifying it a little bit. And that was the innovation at the individual level. And she is probably taking the initiative to take it to a higher organizational level so that efficiency could be improved, time management and cost cutting could be done. That is a fantastic example to my mind. I think it will be there for a very long time and probably for my entire life. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Go with this group. Yes.
Hello everyone, I'm Ekta Goyal.
Your mic is not on. It's at the bottom.
Hi everyone, I'm Ekta Goyal, doing Human Resource Management Leadership Program here. And in our group we discussed about how national mindset can be changed and can be developed more with the help of education system. We started our interaction by discussing that how babies are very creative, they are very innovative, and how their creativity gets hampered as they grow, because they feel embarrassed, they feel how people will think if they express their ideas very naturally. Then after that we discussed about what is the mentality of scarcity and mentality of abundance, And we discussed that in rural India, it is not the mentality, but it is the actual reality that we face the scarcity. So the education system has to cater in order to bridge the gap between the scarcity and the actual reality that is happening. After that, we discussed about the practical application part has to be there in the education system, so that people should start thinking practically and apply innovative and creative ideas instead of just cramming and just discussing about the theoretical aspects of the education.
Anybody wants to add anything from the group?
Hello everyone. Just one or two further points to add on it. We discussed about putting extra significance on practical application rather than theoretical application, and so as to have our focus more on the learning and the education rather than getting marks or getting in highlight of the organization or in the schools and colleges. We also discussed about improving the quality of innovation and the role of the families can play and the support that they can provide at each and every level. And we also discussed about the pace with which the innovation is, our education is improving, especially in the rural area. Say for example, 40 to 50 years ago, what was the condition of the school and currently what it is. We can say that more or less it's still the education is not at the quality level. And with this pace, can we see any improvement and innovation at years ahead? Can it contribute further? These were some of my side.
Thank you.